Hi all, Jenny Mills here, one of the research librarians. For your argument paper, you'll be asked to use a variety of sources to support the claim you're making. You may be able to find a bunch of sources related to your topic, but then what do you do with them? I want to introduce the BEAM method, a different way of thinking about sources that will help you figure out how to use the information you find in an effective way. When you get a research paper assignment, you're often given parameters for the sources you are to use. For the argument paper, one of the parameters is that you must use at least 5 substantial sources which relate in a credible way to the topic and thesis. Your instructor may also require you to use at least a certain number of scholarly journal articles or books. Of course, you should follow these parameters, but instead of jumping into a search and taking the first 5 results, try a different approach. Think about this. How will you make your point in your paper? What evidence and examples will you need to support your argument? Instead of focusing on what the sources are, focus on what you as a researcher might do with them. So let's take a look at BEAM. It's a way to categorize sources based on how you will use them. Background sources are the most obvious and the sources we typically start with for general information, facts, and context. Exhibit sources are used as examples to illustrate the points you're making. In addition, you should engage with argument sources, ones in which the other writer makes a claim that you will then affirm, dispute, refine, or extend in some way. And finally, you may use the methods, follow an approach, or use a key idea that you find in a method source. Let's take a look at these categories in more detail. Background is the easiest. These are the sources you use to learn about your topic, to give you facts and context. They may help establish the big picture of your topic. For example, if you're researching alternatives to the high cost of textbooks, you could use this report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics to show how much the costs have increased over the years, establishing the importance and urgency of your argument. You might also use this article and video from Education Week, an online magazine for educators, that defines open educational resources, one potential solution to the problem. You can also use a source as an example or an exhibit. An exhibit is a direct source of information that can be used as evidence for your argument. Some common exhibit sources include statistics or primary sources, but they could be any type of source, again, depending on how you use them. This is a scholarly journal article that could be used as an exhibit. As you can see from the abstract, the purpose of the study was to understand the impact of textbook costs to students and how they are dealing with the problem. So using this article, Exhibit A of your paper, would be about how the cost of textbooks negatively impacts students. Another exhibit could be the list of textbooks from Bruin Books. You could use the list as an example of cost or analyze the list in some way. You will likely need several exhibits to strengthen your argument. Next, you can engage with an argument from a source. This may also be referred to as engaging in the scholarly conversation of a topic. It's likely that others, especially scholars or researchers, have already written on your topic, so you will want to hear what they have to say. You want to listen in on their conversations. Then you will decide if you agree with their arguments or not, in what ways, or how you might build upon them, and so on to develop your own argument. These sources are often scholarly books and journal articles, but could also include some other things like a lengthy essay in a magazine. This source is a scholarly article from the Journal of the Academy of Business Education. The title of this one makes the argument pretty clear, but it's detailed in the abstract as well. The second source is also a scholarly article. This one also studies the perceptions of students, but went further, looking at course outcomes in order to argue that open textbooks don't come at the expense of quality or student performance. Finally, method sources allow you to borrow an approach, a theory, a key idea to frame your own analysis. They are works which provide a lens through which you frame your own analysis. You may not use these types of sources until you get deeper into research for your discipline, but I'll provide a couple of examples for you to consider. The first example of a method source is this journal article, which describes the use of a methodology to map the open educational practices of instructors at a particular university. As a researcher, you could use the methodology to map the openness of Belmont faculty. The next example is another journal article. In this method source, the authors introduce the concept of Bildung, which means self-cultivation or self-realization, as a philosophical framework for approaching the question of open education. So you might use this theory to support the whole argument you're making for open educational resources. In this way, method sources are often larger issues that frame the way you talk about your topic. When you put all of these sources together, you're able to make a really strong argument. Keep in mind that one source might be used in several different ways. You might use a source for the argument, and it might also include an example. So sometimes they can fall into more than one category. I hope the BEAM method helps you to think about what sources you need in order to develop and support your argument. And if you're not sure what sources you might need or where to start, be sure to ask a librarian for help. Click on belmont.libanswers.com to see all the ways you can contact us, and I would recommend making a research appointment with us. We love this stuff and would love to see you.